Alright guys, this is kind of an interesting video. We're going to be comparing the 3rd gen versus the 4th gen Firebird side by side. A side by side comparison of a 88 Firebird and an 02 Firebird. Now, first off, as you see, they look completely different. You would never guess that these two cars are related, other than the fact that they both have pop-up headlights and a hatchback glass, opening trunk. But there's a lot more similarities to these cars than you think. Give a good shot of the formula here. Looks pretty sweet. We'll walk on over to the Firebird here, which also looks pretty sweet. But what most people don't understand is that from about the front seats back, the mechanics of these cars are actually identical. The axles, the suspension design, it's all the exact same stuff. And it's even interchangeable. The main difference being that the 4th gen rear axle is actually a little bit wider by about 2 inches than the 3rd gen rear axle. But you can still interchange them between the two cars. So we'll do a good interior shot of the formula. Now we'll walk on to the Firebird here. Now the interiors of these cars, by looking at them, as you can tell, there's not a whole lot related. They're two completely different eras in automotive design. Not a whole lot is shared between the two. But what you will notice is the seats are actually pretty similar, and you can actually take these seats out and bolt them into a 3rd gen and vice versa. So it's kind of interesting because you think the interiors are so different, but the seats are actually interchangeable. Now we'll go under the hood of both cars, and this is where the differences really start to show. We'll pop that one. See that? Good old 3800 Series 2. But what I want you to take note of here is how far that V6 sits back in this engine bay. The back 4 cylinders of this V6 are under that windshield, which is very, very unusual in cars. Now we'll go under the hood of the old formula. The good old formula. Pop this big old hood, and that's a much more traditional setup. You got a big V8, 5 liter, 305 cubic inch, and it sits in the engine bay. It fills up the engine bay. However, you can access everything as normal, with the exception of all these stupid vacuum hoses and emissions crap. But you go over here, you see the engine is just stuffed under that windshield, very, very far back. Well, I did that for weight distribution, for improved handling, and yeah, you can feel it. It does handle better than a 3rd gen, but is it worth it? I don't really know, that's up to you. But putting long tube headers on a 4th gen Firebird, which I have done on my Trans Am, is not a fun process. And I'm sure doing anything that involves removing the heads on a 4th gen Firebird is not any fun at all either. You look over here, like I said, a lot more accessible. What you will notice is, the brake booster and everything, it's all in the same spot. Pretty similar. And it's actually a pretty common modification on a 3rd gen to take this whole setup out and put in a 4th gen setup. Kind of interesting. But what you'll notice is, look at this. This is what's called a strut tower, and the 4th gen, or the 3rd gen, does use McPherson struts. But you'll look over here, and you'll look at the 4th gen shock tower, and you'll see that it's significantly different, and that is because the 4th gen uses coilover shocks from the factory. Yes, it has shocks on all 4 corners in the front, with the coil being the spring around the shock. So pretty big difference there. 4th gens also have rack and pinion steering, while the 3rd gens have a steering box deep down in there. I don't think you can really see it, but she's down there. So it's significantly different steering, although when you drive the two, in my opinion, these two cars in particular, they feel pretty similar. Which one's better? I don't really know. I think they're both about the same, but maybe the 4th gen's a little better. But the steering design is significantly different. But with the exception of the steering, the engine bay, and the front suspension, these cars are largely the same underneath. The rear suspension, you both have a solid axle in both cars. You have lower control arms that go from the axle up to the body. You have a panhard bar, a panhard bar brace. You have shocks and springs mounted in the exact same spot. So it's very, very similar. We'll take a peek under here. I don't know how well it's going to show up on camera, being dark. So you see under the formula there. Now we'll go into the V6 Firebird. As you can tell, or maybe can't tell by the crappy video, they are the same underneath. And if you're looking at both of them, you can kind of start to see the similarities. They have similar proportions, the 3rd-gen being much longer in the nose, which I actually like. I do prefer the 3rd-gen styling to the 4th-gen, but there's no doubt that the 4th-gens are built better to a much higher standard of quality. They last much longer, and they drive a little better. But what I will say is the 3rd-gen has much more interior space. Now, we'll focus on the interior now. We did a little look at that before. We'll shut the hood so we're not looking like an idiot. So we'll take a seat in here, and what I would like to notice is getting in and out of the 3rd-gen much easier getting in and out of. Why? I have no idea, but I have a lot more space when I'm in here. I can move my legs freely. I got a lot more room, both in my shoulder department. My head department is a little more headroom, and I just got a lot more knee room, which is appreciated for me. So we'll get out of here. We'll take a step in the 4th-gen. Take a quick seat. Now in this car, I do have to. It does take me a little longer to get in. My headroom is about 1 inch less. My knee room is about, I don't know, maybe 2 inches less. And when you shut the door, it really does start to get, I wouldn't say cramped, but it is significantly tighter than in the 3rd-gen. Now this car being a manual, I do actually have to have the steering wheel of the 4th-gen up all the way for me to shift this car. Now, most people aren't like that. I'm just a bigger boy, but it is what it is. But that just about does it for the differences between the 3rd and 4th-gen Firebird. So thanks for watching. I hope you found this video enjoyable. Have a good one.